Everyone moved faster. At the edge of the heaving river, a new bride was driven and sat in a box. Several strong men pushed the box hard towards the river. Sis! Sis! A teenager ran hastily, but was stopped by several other strong men. Stand still. You're not allowed to go over there. You guys let go of my sister. Let go. Brother, take care of Mom. I won't be able to do my filial duty for him, so don't miss me. Let go of my sister. Go back with me. You let go of me. The sorcerer, cloaked in flowing robes, lifted his hands high and chanted in a booming voice, "Fool! Your sister is a priestess, born on the 4th day of the 4th month under the lunar calendar. She is the perfect bride for the river god. Just offer her, and the heavens will bless the land with sweet rain." His voice echoed ominously as the burly men, without hesitation, heaved the heavy box toward the river's edge. With a forceful push, it slid into the water, wobbling unsteadily as it drifted toward the center of the river. The once sturdy box now swayed dangerously, tilting as water began to seep into the bottom. Slowly, it started to sink. Inside the box, the bride, bound and powerless, closed her eyes in resignation. Helpless and trapped, she could feel the cold water rising around her ankles, creeping higher with each passing moment. The world outside grew distant, muffled by the sound of water splashing and the sorcerer's haunting chant still hanging in the air. The bride's heart sank, knowing her fate was sealed. Sis, the teenager, watched the box sink with his own eyes, but he couldn't break the strong man's bonds, so he could only roar up to the sky, "I'll avenge you." The rain fell from the sky, drenching the teenager's face with a mixture of tears and rain. The moon hung hazily in the sky, casting a faint silver glow over the garden. The peony flowers were in full bloom, their delicate petals releasing a rich, dark fragrance that filled the cool night air. A light veil of mist drifted down, adding an ethereal touch to the scene. Hannah extended her snow-white right hand, graceful and elegant, lifting a corner of the veil. Her eyes, shimmering with a distant, dreamy look, seemed lost in thought as her pace slowed. With each step, her movements were deliberate, almost hypnotic. Her beautiful eyes flickered with a hint of mischief, and her lips curved into a soft, enigmatic smile. As she turned slightly, her slender fingers brushed gently over the fragrant stone behind her, as if savoring the texture beneath her touch. The night was still, but the quiet grace of Hannah's presence made the air around her hum with subtle energy. The chest looked a little old, with a mottled green patina on the copper skin, and a peacock with an open screen carved right in the center, mysterious and ancient. "It's been 1,000 years since we parted in the Peacock Kingdom, and it's said that we share a moon for 1,000 miles. Li Lang, can you see the bright moon here in my place?" Just 2 feet in front of Hannah stood a sleek computer with a camera, a glowing light ring illuminating her from all sides. The setup was perfect for live streaming, casting a soft glow on her flawless, ethereal figure. On the screen, her absolutely stunning reflection captivated the viewers, her beauty almost too perfect to believe. In the live chat room, fans were going wild, frantically flooding the screen with virtual gifts, roses, light bulbs, gold coins, even animated sports cars zoomed across the display. The notifications pinged non-stop as the adoration from her audience poured in. Every gesture she made seemed to enchant her viewers even more, her subtle smiles and graceful movements drawing them deeper into her world. Hannah's allure was undeniable, and the energy of the live stream buzzed with excitement. "Ni girl, this costume is perfect. What magic will you perform today? I'm so excited about tomorrow's hot booking. This chest has a heavenly order on it, enabling one to travel through 1,000 years." Hannah stroked the pattern on the chest. "I want to go on a tour of the Peacock Kingdom." The comments section of the live stream exploded. "Wow, is today's magic trick the disappearance of the living? Where did this box come from? A prop box? It doesn't look like it. It looks like an antique. It's not found from some peacock country, is it? Ni-chan, want to bet, how about you confess to Makoto if you miss? Hana glanced at the last comment and inwardly practically vomited blood. These fans just know how to kowtow to CP, and they're motionless, urging me to confess to Muyang. Is that man, Muyang, something I can take down? Sheep is the platform's #1 male anchor, with a face that has garnered millions of fans. When Hana participated in the Platform Netroots conference, she took a photo with Shepard's goat, and as a result, she was crookedly made into a couple by her fans. However, she and Shepard's crooks are just friends who take pictures and pay attention to each other. To know, Shepard Sheep this personality high cold, do not enter the people, the legend is still a gay, and he confessed to him is simply to bring shame. However, Hana smiled and said, alright, I'll make a bet with you guys, if I fail in my performance, I'll go confess my love to Makoto. My little nymphette girl is going to challenge the high-level men, charge. Little Miss and I take down that Ice Mountain Snow Lotus. The heat in the comments section instantly peaked, and the sports car gifts flew into the live broadcast room. Hana's purpose was achieved, and he didn't dwell on it any longer. After looking at the time, he felt that it was almost time, so he said goodbye to the fans and climbed into the box. As she closed the chest, she touched the mottled stone pattern on the lid, which went in a direction that resembled some kind of ancient writing. This chest couldn't be a real antique, could it? The thought had just popped up for a second before Hana dismissed it. Yesterday, when she and the professor had discovered the chest at the Peacock Kingdom's ruins, they had seen 2 lines of simplified Chinese character engraving at the bottom of the chest. Although most of the writing had been covered in patina, a portion of it was vaguely recognizable: the Peacock Kingdom will fall to the Stone Fong Kingdom. Whatever the meaning of the lines, the fact that they were in simplified Chinese characters was enough to indicate that the chest was a recent forgery. Hana closed the lid of the box with relief at the thought. The dark confined space was lit up with an eerie blue light. The light from the cell phone screen illuminated her face, and Hana curled up her legs and held up her cell phone, watching the live broadcast with satisfaction. The comments in the live broadcast room were even more lively, and the popularity had risen by hundreds of thousands from a moment ago. She minimized the live broadcast and dialed Richard's number. Richard, my hacker, hurry up and hack into my live room. Hey, wait a minute, I seem to be having computer problems. It's dead, isn't it? Don't you make a mistake. I've boasted that I'm going to confess to Shepard if the show fails. According to the plan, Richard would record a video in advance of opening the box and realizing that the Hana in the box had disappeared. Then, Richard hacked into Hana's computer while she was live streaming and broadcast this video through the network signal. While the camera was temporarily out of order, Hana climbed out of the box, and Richard would finish the rest of the live broadcast. In this way, the perfect magic effect was created. This plan sounds a bit suspicious of cutting leaks, but magic, originally, is a trick. Just wait, I'm restarting my computer. Richard said, but honey, I really want to say, you're a good senior majoring in ethnicity, you can sing and do magic tricks, why do you have to go and become a Netflix star? Of course it's to publicize folk culture. These days cold majors also need to take advantage of popular industries in order to shine. Hana retorted. But how many of your fans by the Peacock Kingdom ruins you and the professor discovered when you spend all day publicizing them? Don't they follow you just to see you do magic tricks? Is your computer ready or not? It's stuffy in the box. Fluttershy prodded. Alright, I've got it covered. Richard replied, but then again, that box of yours has ventilation holes, right? I've got a long time to get it here, so hang in there. Are you reliable or not? Don't give me a hard time, I don't want to confess to someone. Just then, the phone suddenly went black. Hana pressed her cell phone furiously in confusion. No way, a black screen at this hour. Just then, she suddenly felt a wave of dizziness as the phone snapped on her. I'm not really lacking oxygen, am I? Hana then started panting heavily and reached out to push the box. What's going on here? Smothered to death in a box while performing a magic trick. Even if you die, it has to be a worthy death. I don't want to be the headline of the social news. Meanwhile, Richard was frantically smashing the mouse in his room. The computer in front of him had blue screened. What's going on? Why is the computer crashing again? Fa9. Hannah, say something. Don't scare me. But the voice of Hannah was long gone from the cell phone. Richard immediately felt his scalp numb and immediately got up and rushed outside. He lived on the 6th floor, while Hannah lived on the 26th floor. If Hannah really suffocated in the box, he still had time to save her. When Richard rushed into Hannah's room, she saw that the computer was still live and the fans had sensed that something was wrong. Little Miss Mud has been lying in there for 20 minutes, nothing's going to happen, is it? My God, my little mud girl. Look, 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 the assistant is here. Richard couldn't be bothered to greet his fans and immediately made an effort to lift the box. But to his surprise, the box was empty. Huh? Disappeared? At this moment, Hannah was drowsy and suddenly felt the box begin to lurch. At that moment, she sparked hope. Richard. Little Richard. I knew you were the most powerful, save me. There were faint sounds of people outside, then the box seemed to be lowered, and then the lid was violently opened. There was an instant light in front of his eyes, and Hannah subconsciously turned his face sideways and blocked the blinding light with his hand. As she grew accustomed to it, the world before her became clear. She heard someone say, "There's an extra slave in this box." Slaves? What slave? Hannah was a bit stunned and opened her eyes, only to find several people standing in front of her. They were wearing rough sweatshirts with gold bands tied around their heads, dressed like ancient footmen. She was shocked. Where's Chucky? No one paid any attention to her, and the strange men stared at her strangely. A long-faced man with 2 mustaches pushed his way through the crowd and stepped forward, saying, "Extra person. Let me see." "Ah, Chief, that's her. The box was empty and somehow there's an extra person. Don't be ridiculous. I would have been performing in the box. But you guys, how did you end up in my house? Little ninny, you say this is your home? Ha 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 ha." Following the mustache guy's finger, Hannah twisted his head to look and was stunned. In front of her eyes was a sky-blue-colored pink wall, and the sound of silk, bamboo, and strings echoed in the air. There were musicians playing on the side of the wall, on the other side there were flower girls and young students practicing to tune their voices, and there were also people practicing juggling, a beautiful somersault over, dexterous and skillful. This was a classical courtyard in the style of a pear orchard, and garden elegance permeated everywhere. Hannah sat in a box, looking at all this incredulously. Wasn't I broadcasting magic at home? How did I come to this garden? Am I dreaming? What's your name? Hannah. Okay, slave set Hannah silver money 15 jars. The mustache guy took a brush and quickly wrote on a piece of paper, "Lao air, we haven't figured out who he is yet." Looking at his dress, he doesn't look like the daughter of an ordinary family either. Are you just going to categorize him as a slave Pole? The mustache guy's face was cold, and he quickly put away the written household register. I'm a person who settles more money and lusts for 2 gas. Out of this door, who can find me? Shut the hell up. The man could only bow his head and keep quiet. The mustache guy turned around and left. I'll go find the shopkeeper to settle the bill, that's how many people I'm selling anyway. The mustache guy and the men left, and only then did Hannah come back to her senses. Hey, don't you guys leave. Where is Richard? Hannah wanted to climb out of the box and go after him to ask for clarification. Instead, someone behind him reached out with a hand and lifted him out of the box. Are you the new slave the theater troupe bought? Why are you wearing these clothes? Hannah to break free, see the person who carried him. It turned out to be a 16 or 17-year-old little girl, wearing a green ancient-style dress shirt, born with a clear brow, just between the eyebrows with a mean gas. And who are you? Don't pull me. Hana quickly broke free. Where's Jiangyu? How did I get here? You're pretending to be confused, aren't you? The dentist just sold you in, specializing in pinching feet and pounding shoulders for our master. The little girl's eyes widened as she pinched the clouds on the flower clay costume. This is the clouds embroidered specifically for the sacrifice to the gods. Do you know how many embroiderers stayed up with their eyes red before they embroidered it? Take it off for me, or I'll go and ask the class master to punish you. God's tooth, God's peddler, I'm warning you, this is a society of the rule of law. I will call the police if there is any human trafficking. The words were spoken in a bullish manner, but Hana's heart was a bit beat up. He broke away from Duoer and returned to look through the box and found his cell phone and small carry-on bag. Hanani picked up her cell phone and realized that it was still on a black screen and she couldn't turn it on no matter what. There were also only some cosmetics and skin care samples in the carry-on bag. Get undressed, I'm warning you. Duo here yelling and screaming. What is the behavior? Hana turned into the conspiracy. See as a senior glory colorful wonderful woman walked over. The woman's graceful temperament people look and respect. This woman is also followed by a 40-year-old middle-aged man. A section of clothing, looks rich and elegant. The little girl who was called Duo Air hurriedly greeted her late, master, class master, master. It turns out that you have already put on the inheritance clothes, then this thing on this slave. Sure enough, the myriad girl was wearing a harmonious god system talisman that was extremely similar to the Hana, and if one didn't distinguish it carefully, one wouldn't really be able to tell the difference. Class master, you paid heavily for our hop-sing girl to come and dance the draw. As a result, this cheap slave is also wearing a draw uniform. Are you really like our Miss Harmony? Our Miss Acacia is the Peacock Kingdom's #1 people's division, so remove this cheap slave or we're not done. Hana looked up and down at the woman named Acacia Girl, and a thought popped up in her heart. Is this a cosplay scene? Or are you guys playing scripted kill? She recalled the recent popularity of scripted kill games, social murder hunting games in which 4 to 6 players usually enter a scenario and act out a story to find the murderer the game sets out to kill. Many stores also have immersive themes that don't tell the players that they're playing a scene at all. It couldn't be that Richard secretly ordered some large immersive script kill behind my back and then dragged me over to play with him, right? Hana secretly thought. Duoer backed away in fear, while the class master looked over the list of slaves in his hands and spoke. Your name is Hana, right? Just now, the manpreneurs have already sold you to me. I am the class master of the raincoat class, which is your master. Hurry up and take off your clothes. Hana was not willing to show weakness. I'm warning you, don't mess around. I bought this dress with real money. What's to stop you from letting me wear it? The class master smiled coldly. I've never seen such a bold and fat slave like you. Men, bring the whip. Hana showed no weakness. I'm warning you, I'm a blue belt in Taekwondo. Also, I can call the police. The two of them froze for a bit, and the wonderful woman next to them, Hepping, was getting colder and colder. She was the Peacock Kingdom's #1 playwright, Huan, as Duoer had said, and at that moment, she was sizing up Hana, gradually realizing that even though the god sacrifice clothes on her and Hana were very similar, the workmanship and embroidery of Hana's clothes were actually much more exquisite than hers. The same is the cloud shoulder of the auspicious cloud pattern. The silver wire on the cloud shoulder of the flower clay is more bright, glittering in the sunlight, like a phoenix in flames. And cloud shoulder edge of the tassel carefully pendant on the size of the jade beads. A little move, jade beads collision issued as pin gold cut jade like pleasant sound. Once the whirl dance, there is bound to be large beads of small beads falling from the jade disc of the ultimate music. The same is the lake blue skirt, Hana's skirt more down, the color gradually become deeper and deeper, like a white cloud out of the mountain. The fairy air, can be said to be wonderful. Acacia forced down the jealousy in her heart and coldly asked, Hana, which manufacturer imitated this dress of yours? How much silver did it cost? Taobao bought it, I forgot the exact price, it's not expensive, it's about the cost of 3 meals of Hadaleo. Hannah replied. Seabiscuit? What's that? Acacia frowned. It's just fondue, haven't you ever had it? Hannah replied casually, with a hint of flirtation. Acacia's face became even more ugly, and said with forced composure, 3 meals worth of money? That's all it took to make such a priceless treasure, and it actually far exceeds my God's sacrifice clothing. She couldn't hang on to her face completely and turned her head to look at the class master. I see that this girl's heavenly beauty and brows are like a peacock seedling, so let her take my place on the stage. The class master panicked and urged, don't, Miss Acacia. You are the peacock. Only your drawing dance can pray for the people's blessings. This girl is a lackey, how can she be worthy? I certainly deserve it. Where's the jump, tell me? A girl who doesn't know the heights of heaven. Acacia laughed coldly, pointing to a platform, right there, I'll see if you dare. Hannah craned her head to see a platform set up underneath the wooden wolf rock. She instantly smiled, this is it. Hannah strides towards the platform and stands on it, assuming a confident stance. What's there to be afraid of? When I was a hit at the COS convention, you hop sing girls didn't even know where you were debuting. Upon this statement, Hepburn and the class master were furious. The class master shouted angrily, get down here and don't touch those things. Hannah laughed disdainfully and took a step back, unconsciously pressing his right hand on a button on the pillar. Suddenly, the platform slowly rose, it turned out to be a lifting platform. Hannah stood on the platform, looking left and right, feeling incomparably new. When the lifting platform rose to a high place, the scene that Hannah saw shocked her even more. The highest place was actually an ancient social theater stage. There was a sea of people under the stage and thunderous applause. The curtains were drawn back, the drums were beating, the class master was in a hurry, the others were busy pressing the mechanism to bring the stage down, but the mechanism seemed to be out of order. Standing on the stage, Hannah looked at the audience below the stage and was secretly surprised. Richard, this script kills to hire so many group actors, this cost is too big, how much does it cost? From afar, Hepping and Duoer watched Hannah on the stage and said with a cold smile, Master, I see that his hands and feet are at a loss, so I guess his dancing skills aren't very good either. What can a slave be capable of? Acacia stared at Hannah with a face full of sarcasm, her heart full of disdain, but since he's so arrogant, let him try it out so that he can realize what kind of a commodity he really is. The audience under the stage muttered, that's not hop sing. I paid a lot of money to see the Hapwin girl. Yeah, what's this dancing? It's an imposter. Refund. Hannah was stunned by the gesture, and then saw a chubby audience member complaining loudly on stage, and became furious. You can't even manage your own figure, and you dare to judge me? A group actor still dares to physically attack me, the titular player dash. Her heart crossed, and she was secretly fierce. I, Hannah, have been roaming the live broadcast circle for so many years, based on this ugly god dance. If I can't dance, who else can? The crowd on stage froze, not expecting Hannah to dare to directly rebuke the audience. Taking advantage of this freeze, Hannah stabilized her pace and danced lightly, with a delicate posture and a light demeanor. The whole audience was shocked. The fat man who was arrogant just now had his mouth wide open and looked at Hannah dumbfounded. This episode is over. Welcome to the next one. As the ancient moon shing sounded again, Hannah gently raised her hands and danced softly, just like a peacock opening its screen. The bright blue sujo embroidered skirt behind her fluttered in the wind, as if it was as gorgeous as the evening sun. This beautiful dance instantly conquered the entire audience. The arrogant fat man of the party was also instantly polluted by the Hannah, leading the way and shouting, Peacock! 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 What's a peacock? Is it the code name of a certain celebrity fan? How come I haven't heard of any celebrity fan named Peacock? I didn't realize he had 2 tricks up his sleeve. Yes, 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 this raincoat class is really a crouching tiger and hidden dragon. Not only can it invite Miss Acacia, but also this fairy. This is the best pumping dance I've ever seen. The fairy deserves to be a peacock. The applause on the stage was thunderous, and the theatergoers could not get enough of it, and there was a lot of discussion. Hana, complacently scanning the scene, suddenly felt inexplicably cold. He fixed his eyes and saw a mysterious young man standing in the crowd, about 20 years old or so, handsome and extraordinary, with an inscrutable expression. A pair of eyes as black as ink were gazing at him coldly. Perhaps the theater fans next to him were too enthusiastic, making that teenager particularly conspicuous. Hana couldn't help but look at him twice. If there is a bright moon like Frost in the world, then this teenager can be called Frost under the moon. If there is a strong pine in the world, this teenager is just like the pine in the clouds. He was like a bright red stamen flower, a clear spring in the mountains, extraordinarily striking. Hey, hey, peacock! Peacock! The cries from the stage grew louder. Hana looked a bit dumbfounded, and only snapped back to her senses when the chants of the theater fans grew louder. This is no time to be obsessed with handsome men. I'm still doing the god sacrifice dance. Taking down a bunch of fans is the important thing. Thinking of this, Hana frowned slightly, suddenly feeling that the tempo of the soundtrack was ridiculously fast. He glanced at Hoa Ni next to the musicians and instantly realized, this is her setting me up, trying to make me lose track of the tempo and make a fool of myself in public. Hana quickly rehearsed the next dance steps in his head, realizing that if he followed the drum beat closely, the dance would lose coordination. If he threw off the beat, it would be difficult to blend in with the music. Instead, he made a flying turn and began to spin rapidly. While the music was getting denser, Hana's footsteps and movements were firmly stuck to the beat, and he flew and spun like the wind on the stage, just like a real peacock, dancing in a stunning manner, flowing the wind back to the snow. The entire arena fell into silence, and the crowd gazed in fascination at the figure flying and spinning on the stage. Standing beside the musician, Huan's face turned blue. She didn't expect that her casual recommendation had actually accomplished Hana. It's just a slave, how does he deserve it? Acacia laughed coldly, her gaze cold. Don't worry, master, he won't be pleased for long. I'm relieved that you're doing something. Duoer understood Huan's meaning and quietly retreated with a sinister smile. Hana on the stage didn't realize the danger at all, and he was still spinning rapidly. The musician's fingers frantically plucked on the strings, and the music became faster and faster, almost losing its rhythm, but it still didn't disrupt Hana's dance steps. Instead, he was like a fish swimming against the current in this torrential music, bursting with dazzling light. Finally, the musician's strings snapped with a boom, and the music came to an abrupt end. At that moment, the dance of the Hana also reached the most extreme peak. He transformed countless flying pigeons in his show room and flew towards the azure sky. Flying pigeons rushing towards the sky, this was a magic trick that he had originally planned to perform in the live broadcast room, but he didn't expect it to come in handy here. The audience under the stage was being shocked by this beautiful sight and applauded wildly. The fat theater fan had already shouted until his throat was hoarse, raising his hands in the air and shouting, "Hey, peacock! A well-deserved peacock!" However, Acacia sneered, this slave really came here for Peacock's name. He thinks that a good dance is enough. It is too naive. Hana gasped for breath and looked excitedly at the audience on the stage. Just then, the pulley on the high stage slowly turned, and 10 large boxes suspended by ropes descended from the sky, resting above Hana's head. It's time to light the fire. The sacrifice has begun. A follower on the stage muttered in a low voice. What's the point of lighting a fire when you're just dancing? Isn't the cost of this script kill too high? Hana muttered in his mind. The class master under the stage had long been happy, and when he saw that Hana was standing still, he hurriedly urged one of his followers to climb the ladder to deliver the torch. quickly go up and give her the torch. The follower held a torch in one hand and quickly climbed up to Hana. Miss, hurry up and light the fire. These are sacrificial animals, it would be bad to miss the auspicious time. Unexpectedly, Hop Sing came with quick steps and snatched the torch. Let him light a fire to the sky. This platform is also worthy. Hana looked at follower and Acacia in shock, her heart filled with doubt. You guys have to abide by fire prevention even if you script kill, right? What if ignition causes a fire? Acacia grunted disdainfully, what firefighting? I don't know what you're babbling about. This god sacrifice dance is just fine for you to dance, but this firelighting and sacrifice to the heavens can only be mine. No one's taking it from you, I just think safety precautions are important. Hana responded helplessly. Hop Sing didn't bother to pay any more attention to him and walked quickly towards a crate with a torch, while his follower picked up a bucket of oil and splashed it on the crate, then signaled Hop Sing to light the fire. Just then, a dart flew in with a whoosh and stabbed the follower's arm, who let out a miserable scream. Immediately afterward, another dart flew in, just in time to extinguish the torch in Hop Sing's hand. The crowd of onlookers were shocked, and immediately fled the theater in chaos. Run away. Murder. Who spoiled the god sacrifice ceremony? Hana stood on the stage and also subconsciously wanted to leave. But Huan suddenly turned pale and reached out to yank him to his feet. Hana was unsteady and fell onto the stage. At the same time, Huan's foot pointed lightly, his body leaping 7 feet away, rushing at Hana angrily. What are you doing? How dare you frame me like this? Who set you up? I didn't even dash. Hana was just about to defend himself when the wooden box hanging above his head suddenly fell down. Just in the nick of time, that mysterious teenager rose up in the air like a graceful crane, instantly saving Hana. Hana's eyes were blurred and she didn't see too clearly, only feeling that the teenager's movements were extremely fast and elegant. A gust of wind blew past his ears, and he was embraced to the side. At the same time, several boxes have fallen to the ground, wooden boards broken, rolled out the huddled children. Those children were not very old, probably 4 or 5 years old, probably taking drugs and still sleeping. Children. Isn't this a ritual made by script kill? Aren't props used in rituals? How could there be a child in the box? Hana was filled with surprise. What's the point of acting so surprised? Aren't you an accomplice? A cold voice rang out. Hana looked up and saw the mysterious teenager standing behind him. Just now, he was the one who transported his steps like flying and saved himself. At this moment, he was looking at Hana with his eyes downcast, that handsome face cold as ice, his eyes filled with contempt. This handsome man, you. Shepherd sheep? You're shepherd sheep, right? I told you that you look familiar. Hana finally recognized that this teenager wasn't top-stream male Netflix shepherd's goat. It was just that he had changed his ancient clothes and temperament, and he hadn't recognized it himself just now. At this moment, Hana couldn't care less if Shepherd was supposed to be here or not, and tightly grabbed his sleeve and asked, "Where the hell is this? Can you lend me your cell phone for a bit?" Hana turned back to see that her small carry-on bag was still on the lift, and she was relieved. "I want to call the police, but my cell phone is dead." Hana wanted to pick up her bag, but the teenager grabbed her wrist. Then, an agile teenager flew forward, kneeling and cupping his fists. "My subordinate is here. What are your orders, my lord?" "Take her away," the teenager said coldly. "This isn't a scripted kill." Hana despaired in his heart. Half an hour later Hana hung her head and accepted the fact, she had crossed over. Time travel, how could such a strange thing happen to me? Hana sat in the prison wagon and looked at the outside world in despair. As far as the eye could see, there were peacock feather-adorned antelope women everywhere. Peacock feathers fell from the clothes of dignitaries, and the hairpins of young ladies were actually made of peacock antelope. Ordinary people couldn't afford peacock antelope, so they painted peacock feathers on their rough clothes. When you look at the roadside gouache stores, the most stocked item is not rouge, but a variety of beautifully designed peacock antelope. That's all right, wonton stalls, hanging stalls or sellers of goods on the signboard must be peacock feathers. Hawkers shouted, "Ha ha, you see my peacock antelope, 3 years male K, the most beautiful bird felt, not spirit do not pay ah. Aya, Mr. Su, the rouge you wore today is extraordinarily nice, your face looks smaller." The customer who bought the rouge also sighed, "My fate is bad, I don't have a beautiful face, if I look ugly, I have to pay more taxes, so I can only put some effort in these areas." Hannah's face darkened, his mind incredulous, "You still have to pay taxes for being ugly? 3 years of Xiong. What the hell? Peacocks still have years." A flash of memory flashed through her mind like lightning, the old days when she used to survey the ruins of the Peacock Kingdom with her professor. The address thing. 2 months ago, their folklore department did discover the ruins of an ancient state Qi named Peacock State. I wouldn't have traveled to the ancient Peacock Kingdom, would I? Hannah thought, full of disbelief. The professor had also said that the provincial research team was also very interested in Peacock Country. What did the professor say at the time? Hannah tried to recall and finally remembered the professor's words, the scientific research team found traces of temporal impulses in this place. They'll explore this site with us, and if things go well, it's likely that we'll be able to build a time machine that travels through space and time. A time machine? That only exists in science fiction, how could it become reality? Hannah thought, only to realize that reality had hit her hard in the face and sent her to the Peacock Kingdom. Peacock Kingdom, we haven't yet verified which dynasty this Peacock Kingdom is actually a small country how come we're airborne in this strange time and space? Wormhole wormhole, I'm convinced, quickly let me go back. Hannah gripped the bars of the prison wagon and stared despairingly at the sky that was divided into strips. Just then, the guard named Tsongshi walked out of the troops gate, instantly attracting Hannah's attention. Hey, strong man, I'm innocent. You let me go. I'm not from your era, I was sent here by a wormhole. Hannah shouted as she grabbed the bars of the prison wagon. However, Forsyth completely ignored her. A few of the playwrights were originally crying in low voices behind Hannah, and when they heard her pleas, they also began to shout out, from Lord Shi, Lordly, we are all slaves as well, and we really don't know where those little slaves came from. We in no way had the intention of killing anyone, let us go, Lordly. It was only then that Hannah noticed the Xian clothes young man walking out from the theater troupe, his eyebrows handsome and his face even colder than from the west. She hurriedly pulled over an opera singer and asked, Hey, is he Lordly? Do you know anything about him? This Lordly looks so much like Netflix Shepherd, both with a handsome ice cube face. If I can ask for more inside information, I might be able to find a way to escape. That little opera singer whispered, he is the Peacock Kingdom's young sovereign, Li Muyang. He hated the theater troupe's work with the 5 grains, and he also once legislated against the indiscriminate killing of slaves. Slave killers and murderers are the same offense, all of which he pushed to set up the law. This time, when he caught the god sacrifice ceremony using not livestock, but people, he definitely wanted a heavy punishment. The little opera singer said a couple sentences, then suddenly grabbed Hannah's hand and shook it desperately, Hey, you're the dancing fitness girl. You must be involved in this, and you have the nerve to ask me. Hannah made to break away from his hand, I really don't know. I just got here, what could I know? You volunteered to replace Acacia in the dance sacrifice to the gods, and you say you're innocent? Didn't know anything. Hannah followed the sound and saw Li Muyang standing outside the prison car, looking at her coldly. His eyes were filled with crushed ice and a chilling aura. Hannah couldn't help but shrink her neck and felt a pang of weakness. Shepherd. No, Lordly, it was Miss Acacia who told me to go up and dance, not that I wanted to. Nonsense. It's clearly you who had bad intentions and robbed my master of the qualifications for the god sacrifice. Acacia and Duor walked out from inside the door. Just as I hear this from Hannah, the episode plays out. Welcome to the next episode. Welcome to the show produced by Chunlu Culture, the large-scale ancient-style film and television multiplayer audio drama of the same name, Little Green Clothes Under the Peacock City. Written by Curtain Out Light. By the National Treasure has the voice of the parent-child about Chin Dai lead actor, Zhang Yunxin lovingly produced. Episode 6, My Lord, I heard from the man-at-arms that one of the slaves he sold was this Hannah. He even volunteered to perform the sacrificial god dance. Our Lord has always been kind, and we couldn't compete with him, so we let him take advantage of it. Now that I think about it, his identity is suspicious and his motives are unknown, so please have your lordship look into it carefully. Humph, a shady person, right? I'm suspicious just because you say so. I don't know how there are so many children in the box. You'd better talk to the officials about this. Master, let's go. Duo held Hop Sing's hand and tried to leave. Unexpectedly an arm stopped their way. From Period looked warily at Duo and Acacia. No one can leave until the matter is investigated. Lordly, our master is the Peacock Kingdom's #1 poser, how could he do something that would destroy his own career like that? Duo looked back at Li Muyang. Yeah, did I make a mistake? Acacia said coldly as well. Li Muyang waved his hand. From Period, let them go. From Period reluctantly got out of the way, and Heping held her head high as she and Duo arrogantly left. Only when the backs of the two could not be seen did Songchi come over and ask, My lord, you just let them go. Acacia is a peacock, she can't run away. Instead of spooking the snake, it's better to send someone to keep an eye on her. Li Muyang responded indifferently. At a command, the prison wagon drove slowly. Hannah sat in the rickety prison wagon, mulling over Hop Sing's conversation. When she saw that the little playwright from earlier had calmed down and was sitting dumbfounded, she went over and asked, Hey, let me ask you again, what is peacock? You're pretending to understand, aren't you? You don't even know the title peacock. The little opera singer sneered. Hannah asked vainly, I don't know, can you explain? In our profession, the highest dream is to become a peacock. The most popular theater masters are easily known as peacocks, who are endowed with auspiciousness and can bless the country with good weather. That's why they usually sacrifice goddesses and dance undulating sacrificial dances. No wonder those theater fans shouted, Peacock, when I danced the sacrifice dance. It turns out that in their eyes, peacock is synonymous with goddess. Hannah came to a sudden realization. Yes, today's peacock is that Acacia girl from the party. She has outstanding talent and has been a peacock for 3 consecutive years. In a few more years, her position will be secure. I haven't seen Acacia dance, but I don't think she'd be any good. Hannah said confidently. You really don't know the heights of heaven. Do you know why Lord Li spared Acacia? It's because once he captures her, theater fans all over the country will riot. She dances all over the world, and you, how many % of her can you achieve? The little opera singer said disdainfully. As he was talking, the prison car pulled into the main national highway. Hannah no longer argued with the little playwright, but sat in the prison car and looked at the streetscape of the peacock country. The prosperous ancient country was like a picture scroll that unfolded in front of her eyes. People here love peacocks to the extreme, dignitaries take peacocks as pets, and the signboards of the restaurants are even carved with gorgeous peacock heads. There was an endless stream of incoming and outgoing moments. Li Muyang rode a high horse and followed beside the prison wagon. The eyes under his long eyebrows were full of vigilance as he scanned the surroundings. His appearance quickly caused a stir, and there were constantly pedestrians whispering around him. Peacock Kingdom's #1 beautiful man, Li Shaozai. It's him. He's traveling, hey. It's a pity, I heard that Lord Young Boy only loves bearded men. It's that Dr. Do, isn't it? My daughter is hopeless. I don't believe it. Lord Do is just a close friend of Young Boy, right? Hey, you don't know, they go in and out in pairs, they say they have the Dragon Yang's number. When Hannah heard the words, Dragon Yang's number, she was so excited that she almost didn't stand up. How could she not be excited with her status as a senior corrupt woman? She tilted her head and began to accost Li Muyang. Lord Young Boy, so you like men? Then do you like reading crispy duck literature? I can write it, and the writing is not bad. If you let me go, I'll write a few novels for you, okay? Li Muyang coldly glanced at Hannah, not responding at all. Can I use you as a prototype? I guarantee that once this book is published, the Luoyang paper will be expensive. By then you will have 10 times more fans than you do now, and you can become a well-deserved ancient internet celebrity. When Li Muyang heard this, a cold ice swept over, his voice grim, speak more and cut out your tongue. Hannah was so scared that she hurriedly shut up, her self-confidence was instantly dented, and she began to rack her brain to think of how to get out of the situation. Suddenly, she remembered the handwriting she saw at the bottom of the chest ***, the Peacock Kingdom will fall to the Stone Fong Kingdom ***. Then she had a bright idea. Lord Li, I have a very important piece of information about the safety of the Peacock Kingdom. If I tell you, you have to let me go. What intelligence? Li Muyang frowned slightly. You promised me first that you would let me go when you said so. Good. The matter is so important that it requires a private conversation. Li Muyang pinched Hannah's wrist and didn't say anything. Hannah extended his hand and made a hand-sword motion, if there's a single false statement, you'll cut my neck. Li Muyang's gaze fell on her neck, snow-white and slender, with a beautiful arc. Hannah couldn't help but develop a chill, busy covering her neck with her hand, smiling sarcastically, I'm just making an analogy, you're a generous person, surely you wouldn't do that, right? Oh. My plenty is only for good people. Li Muyang responded coldly, his tone full of oppression. Hannah couldn't help but shiver. At night, inside a side room of Li Shaozai's residence, the furnishings were simple and rustic. Hannah sat behind a wooden table with her head bowed, carefully looking at Li Muyang in front of her. He had a cold expression, staring at her without blinking. Say, what intelligence? Li Muyang opened his mouth. Hannah coughed twice. From the period, he then carried in a peacock-printed chest and placed it in front of Hannah's eyes. Afterwards, an elegant teenager dressed in white like snow followed in. Only to see that white-clothed teenager salute Li Muyang and say, Your Excellency, this is the box that was brought back from the Raincoat Theater. Tough on you, Lumo. Li Muyang responded indifferently. Hannah's gaze fell on the white-clothed young man named Lumo, and her heart couldn't help but tense up. The eyes were immediately firmly attracted. That teenager had a soft temperament between his eyebrows, and his face was pale, but there was a faint layer of backlighting on his skin, which in turn added a bit of a delicate sense of beauty like that of a sick Shih Tzu. The pair of phoenix eyes contain a trace of timidity, just like deer eyes as pathetic. Although the cheeks are thin, but the lines are soft, slightly whitish lip beads are full and attractive. This episode is over, so welcome to the next one. Elegant and courteous, what a beauty like Shishir. Peacock Country reveres beauty, it really lives up to its name. Hannah couldn't help but marvel and began to break her fingers and calculate, Lord Li is magnificent, from the 7 peacocks, Lumo beauty is as sick as Shishir. In less than the first day, she had already met 3 beautiful men. Hey, what are you babbling about? From 7 unhappily stepped in front of Lumo, staring warily at Fluttershy. Hannah sized up the two and realized that from 7 and Lumo looked to be of similar age, and let out a few sinister laughs. I get it, you're jealous, aren't you? Huh, if I'm not mistaken, you guys grew up together, right? How do you know? Have you investigated us? From Seven's face plummeted cold, and he drew the matching sword at his waist, instantly murderous. Ah, no, 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 don't get me wrong. Hana panicked and explained, I'm just relying on my many years of experience, although you guys don't understand the word rotten girl. You guys seem to have a deep bond and a super strong sense of CP, so that's why I concluded that you two are young. Really, I didn't mean any harm. Just wanted to get close to you guys. From Seven, no rudeness. Lumo stopped it softly. Only then did Slave 7 slowly put away his matching sword. The case is also given to you, say it, what kind of information do you really have? Li Muyang spoke coldly. The Peacock Kingdom will perish in the Stone Fong Kingdom. You have to watch out for the Stone Fong country. Hana said solemnly. At these words, the room fell into dead silence. Acting as if nothing had happened, Hana walked over to the box, intending to pick it up and leave. Just as she turned around, she was stopped by a sharp blade. What are you doing? You're backtracking. Hana looked at Song Chi in surprise, then at Li Muyang, and realized that his face had become even more gloomy. The Peacock country is surrounded by the Spring Water country, the Gold and White country, and the Clear End country, and I've never heard of any Stone Fong country. Li Muyang said coldly. What? It can't be. Isn't this chest a fake? Since it's not a real antique, the message engraved on the chest can't be trusted, right? Hana argued in panic. Li Muyang stood up and stepped closer. Hana stepped back in terror, blinking her eyes and looking at him pitifully. I'll give you one day to figure out what kind of information to give us. Otherwise, Li Muyang said coldly, beheading. Hana was so scared that she was about to cry out. After Li Muyang finished speaking, he lifted his steps and walked out of the room, with Lumo and From Seven following closely, and then closed the door behind him. Hana heard Li Muyang's commanding voice from outside, and her heart was in a panic. Hurry up. Hana sat disheveled on the ground, his heart in turmoil. He had stabbed a big hole, and might really have to explain his little life in this ancient time. Hana sniffled, wanting to cry but forcibly holding back her tears. Suddenly, something occurred to Hana and he hurriedly opened the crate, climbed in, and closed the lid. After a while, however, he opened the box and stood up, nothing had changed. He was still in this ancient world. It must be the wrong posture, do it again. I can definitely go back. Hana covered the lid of the box again, and after several repetitions, he realized in despair that he really couldn't go back. He hammered the bottom of the box in anger, but unexpectedly found that the bottom of the box was very smooth, not even a word. Oh my God, where's that line? Hana touched the bottom of the box and thought, it can't be that one trip through a wormhole makes you different, can it? Hana was busy climbing out of the box and looked around. Suddenly, he realized that there were clerical treasures sitting on the bookcase in the corner, and hurriedly pounced over to write a note. Peacock Kingdom was destroyed by 10 Square Kingdom. After writing it, Hana placed the note at the bottom of the box, closed her eyes, folded her hands, and silently prayed, Box God, please stop joking around, hurry up and change back and take me home. Fani waited for a while, opened his eyes, and realized that the note was actually gone. He looked around, still in that quaint side room. You. Hana was so angry that she hammered the box. You sent back all the notes and just left me behind? What do you mean? Just as Hana was chanting angrily, a note appeared in the box. Hana thought she was blind, picked up the note and saw that it was actually Richard's handwriting on it. The note read, Wow, why are you so ugly, is it you? Richard, you detrimental friend. Hana was so excited that she was on the verge of crying. Although this box could not teleport people, it could actually teleport notes. He excitedly picked up a pen and paper and continued to write, Xiao Yu, I'm stuck in the Peacock Kingdom and can't go back. You hurry up and send me some chili fries, potato chips, and hamburgers over here. Not long after, a lot of food did appear in the box, all of which Hannah usually stored in the refrigerator. Also appearing was Richard's note, "Geez, you actually did time travel. Is it dangerous? Dangerous? Dangerous my ass. They're all stunningly beautiful men, they're immune to beauty tricks. My beauty is useless here." Hannah grasped the note, unable to cry. He calmed down for a moment, pinched his hand and walked to the window, pulled open a small slit, and saw from 7 guarding the outside, and immediately put his heart down. Hanani hurried back to the box and wrote a note with a pen and paper, "Dear little Yaya, I need the following equipment." In the dimness, Hannah lets out a wicked laugh as he writes. Early one morning, from 7 yawned and stood guard at the door with his arms wrapped around him. He shouted, "Hey, the big girl got up yet? I can tell you you have to weigh clearly, do not say intelligence. Today is the day you die. Oh, don't think our Lord is a great benefactor. He is the cold-faced Yama that the Peacock Kingdom is known for." After a few moments of silence in the room, a man's weak voice actually came out. "From 7, come on in." As soon as he heard this, from 7, he immediately sensed that something was different and hurriedly took out his key and opened the door to go in. But as soon as he entered the door, he was shocked by the sight in front of him, only to see Lu Mo lying helplessly on the table, his lips bloodless, trembling and reaching out to him. "From 7, from 7. Me. Lu Mo." From 7 frantically jumped forward and hugged Lu Mo, exclaiming, "Ah! How could this happen? What happened to you? Who did this to you? Could it be that little fairy's fault?" Lu Mo weakly whispered, "It is myself. Fu Bo life genus will be exhausted. Welcome to listen to the large-scale ancient-style film and television multiplayer audio drama of the same name, Little Green Clothes Under the Peacock City, produced by Spring Willow Culture. Written by Curtain Out Light. By the National Treasure has the voice of the parent-child said Qingdao lead actor, Zhang Yunxin lovingly produced. 8th episode. Lu Mo trembled his hand, gently caressing from 7's face, his eyes bleak. "I just want to ask, have you ever had me in your heart?" From 7 asked incredulously, "You mean?" "I have. You in my heart. I have you in my heart." 2, then can you close your eyes? I want to see you one last time. Songchi was so sad that she almost shed tears, but she couldn't bear to refuse Lu Mo's request, so she closed her eyes. Lu Mo slowly approached Songchi, suddenly pulled out a tissue from his pocket and violently covered Songchi's nose. From 7 struggled twice and pushed Lu Mo away with one hand. Lu Mo rolled over and broke free from his arms. "Humph. I knew you guys were CP and you still won't admit it." The voice that spoke changed, it was no longer Lu Mo, but Hannah. Hannah spreads out her hand to reveal a voice changer, tucking it away triumphantly. Then hefted his belongings from under the table. It was a makeup bag with all the cosmetics and a mace spray. You. From the 7 trembling pointing at the Hannah, want to stand up, but the legs and feet are weak, want to shout, but cannot shout out. An ancient-style headgear, a set of men's hanbok, plus my ghostly imitation makeup skills, this is what made it possible. Hannah proudly said, if I were to become an imitation makeup blogger, I would also be at the level of 10 million fans. Unfortunately, I just want to spread folk culture, my ambition is not here. Thanks to a number of props delivered by the box, Hannah was able to successfully complete this faux makeup. I don't share the same sky with you. After saying these harsh words from 7, he completely lost his strength and fainted on the ground. Hannah pulled out a money pouch from 7's arms and sighed, seeing as how you're deeply in love with Lu Mo, I'm using ether, not mace. Hannah topped Lu Mo's makeup and held the large box as he strutted towards the entrance of Lifu. The ones who saw him were the maids and the household servants. Butler dear, do you need a little help carrying your boxes? Hannah secretly used a voice changer and responded with Lu Mo's voice, you guys help me move the boxes to the side door, I'll be fine alone. The maids and household servants agreed and helped carry the boxes to the side door. After arriving at the side door, Hannah told them to leave. Then, Hannah was left alone to carry the box, straining to walk outside. It was cold outside the heavenly gate, there were hardly any people on the road in the early morning, and there was no telling where the road in front of them led to. Hannah walked hurriedly, only wanting to get rid of this place, Xiao Zai Fu, in a hurry. So dear Mo is a steward, and is quite young. Hannah walked alone on the remote path and began to think wildly. Li Muyang looks like he's not much older than dear Mo, but he's already sitting in Xiao Zai's position, and is indeed considered a heavenly talent. However, from now on, I will never have any interactions with these people. As long as I can contact last week's moon and the professor and study the laws of wormholes, I will be able to return to the modern era. Thinking of this, Hannah quickened his pace, just wanting to get out of this alley as soon as possible and try the Peacock Kingdom's food before finding a place to settle down. Just as he was thinking about this, a black shadow suddenly appeared behind him and violently struck the back of his head. Hannah only felt a sharp pain at the back of his neck, and then he lost consciousness. I don't know how long it took for Han Asian to wake up with a splitting headache. He moved his body, realizing that his hands were tied and his eyes were dark. He sniffled, choking and coughing on the moist, pungent air. Awake? A lamp lit up, illuminating a hideous scarred face. It was a man about 30 years old, with rough and dark skin, and a scar like an ugly centipede from his brow to his chin, splitting his face in two. Hannah panicked for a few seconds, but quickly calmed down. He quickly looked around and realized that he was in a cellar, while the crate was gone and the small bag he had with him was thrown a meter away. What are you? Hannah opened his mouth and asked. Scarface let out a vicious laugh and quickly stepped forward, ripping open Mudclay's collar, revealing his smooth neck. Seeing this scene, Scarface was instantly infuriated and shouted, "You actually disguised yourself as Butler Liu." Hannah then remembered that at this moment, he was still wearing a Deemer's face, and the voice changer was probably lost, so although he could camouflage his face, his voice was exposed. I wanted to ask you about something, but since you're not Butler Liu, you're useless. Scarface raised the knife in his hand menacingly, and Hannah instantly broke out in a cold sweat. The situation at hand couldn't be worse, this Scarface both wanted money and had the potential to tear the ticket. Hannah was flustered in his heart, but he suddenly laughed out loud, You'll lose a lot if you kill me. If you leave me alive, I can make your face look like Panin. Panin? Only then did Hannah realize that the Peacock Kingdom's era might not have reached the Wei and Jin dynasties, so she hastily changed her words, No, it's even more beautiful than Song Yu. Scarface was amused and a hint of suspicion flashed in his eyes. Hannah hurriedly seized the opportunity to continue, Song Yu, Panin, and Lan Ling Wang, they are all the four most beautiful men in ancient times. The Peacock Kingdom honors beauty, and you are certainly no exception. Although I am penniless, I can make you more handsome. Are you mocking me? Scarface's expression suddenly twisted, and his tone became more hateful. I've been unattractive since the day I was born, and everyone laughed at me and said that I was an ominous person. How can a face like this still be beautiful? Hannah took a deep breath, knowing that this was his only chance, and could only continue to persuade, I didn't mock you. As long as you leave me alive, I promise to make you new and turn you into the most handsome person in Peacock Kingdom. 3 years ago I was cut up and even the women in the greenhouse were unwilling to receive me. You're actually saying that I still have a chance to become beautiful? Scarface revealed a look of distrust. Hannah lifted her chin and pointed to her own small carry-on bag, I have the supreme artifact of disguise in that bag. After my marvelous hand painting, not to mention this one scar of yours, even if your face is completely different, I can still paint a beautiful face for you. Scarface was half convinced and shook inwardly. Hannah seized the opportunity and said confidently, since I can transform a woman into a man, naturally I can also transform an ugly person into a beauty. If you don't believe me, you can remove my makeup right now, and I guarantee that after you see my true face, you'll believe in my disguise skills. This episode is over, so welcome to the next one. Episode 9. As expected, Scarface failed to resist the temptation of beauty. He followed Hannah's instructions and took out the makeup remover wipes from her small carry-on bag and roughly wiped them on Hannah's face. Be gentle, you have to use a specific makeup remover wipe for this eye makeup. There's also a sealing wax here, you'll have to use a spatula. Be gentle when removing your lips too, the skin on your lips is delicate. Hannah wailed incoherently. Finally, Scarface finished removing his makeup. When he saw the true face of the Hannah, he was so shocked that he almost threw the candle in his hand. Who the hell are you? Where is dear butler? I've told you before, my disguise is very powerful. Now you should always believe it, right? Hannah responded calmly. Ah. Can you really turn me into someone like Song Yu? Scarface asked hesitantly. Hannah nodded and signaled him to loosen the rope. Scarface immediately untied her, but still held the knife against her. Don't play tricks, or I'll make you beg for your life and die. Don't worry, it's wrapped up in me. Hannah smiled confidently and opened her small carry-on bag, taking out the required cosmetics. She was still thinking about the anti-wolf spray in her mind, but knew that Scarface was still keeping his guard up, and acting rashly would fail instead. First, I have to trim your eyebrows. You don't have to be afraid of this knife, it won't hurt you. After doing this, I can only do your primer. I don't know anything about that, so get it right. If I don't get beautiful, I want you dead. Scarface glared and threatened. Hannah takes a deep breath, picks up her eyebrow razor, and begins to trim Scarface's eyebrows. She carefully trimmed the eyebrows, cleared her face of oils, and took care of her skin before she started applying her makeup primer and foundation. As for the scar, Hannah filled it in with sealing wax, then took out a 6-color concealer palette to cover it up. After doing that, she began to beautify the scarred face's features, hitting the shadows to enhance the three-dimensionality of the face. Eventually, a handsome face came into view. Well, you're walking out now, and you're even more handsome than Butler dear. Don't lie to me, how is it possible? Scarface grabbed Hannah's wrist, still not believing it. Hannah smiled faintly, and with her other hand, she pulled out a small mirror from her small bag. I'm not lying, see for yourself. Scarface glanced at the mirror and his eyes widened in surprise. A handsome face was reflected in the mirror, with eyebrows flying into the temples, a high nose, even skin color, and a handsome temperament, completely lacking the ugliness of the previous Scarface. This. Scarface was dumbfounded, his hand holding the mirror trembled violently, his eyes filled with disbelief. He was completely immersed in his newly refreshed appearance and forgot to defend himself against Hannah. Seeing that the time had come, Hannah quietly picked up the anti-wolf spray, pressed both hands on the spray button, and sprayed hard at Scarface's eyes. Scarface immediately let out a cry of pain and rolled on the ground covering his eyes. Hannah quickly grabbed the candle, took his small carry-on bag with him, found the entrance to the cellar, and climbed out as hard as he could. After lifting the door of the cellar, he found himself in a farmhouse. Help, help! Hannah shouted as she ran. The farmhouse was not big. Hannah quickly ran to the courtyard. He went to yank the courtyard door, but he heard the sound of iron locks. The courtyard door had long been locked from the outside by a large iron lock. Hannah was in a hurry and rushed to the base of the wall, using a few broken bricks to cushion his feet, trying to flip out of the wall. However, Scarface covered his eyes and staggered after him. Hannah looked back and was so scared that his whole body went numb, desperately trying to climb over the wall, but his strength was too small and his body was hanging in midair. Ah, if I had known, I shouldn't have skipped gym class in the first place. Hannah cried without tears. But it was too late to regret now. Damn girl, how dare you harm me? Scarface raised his knife. Hannah was about to let go in response, when suddenly a strong and powerful hand reached out from above, lifting his entire body and bringing it into midair. Scarface pounced in the air, the knife, click, into the wall. He looked up and saw Li Shaozai is standing on the wall, face cold, like Yama. Li Muyang gently raised his hand, a silver needle flew out, hitting Scarface's shoulder. Scarface immediately fell to the ground, unable to move. Superintendent, take the man away. Yes, my lord. From the period in response, he drew his sword and instantly split the door lock in half. Hannah's heart trembled, thinking that she had once mesmerized Songchi, and immediately felt uneasy. Having just gotten out of the wolf's den and into the tiger's den again, she couldn't help but sigh, what kind of sin have I created? Lord Li Shaozai, I am a little dizzy, are we standing too high? Hannah carefully approached Li Muyang, pretending to be powerless. Li Muyang coldly returned, I brought the doctor. Great, I was imprisoned by that thug, I don't know if I have been poisoned. Hannah deliberately leaned pitifully on Li Muyang's shoulder. I also brought the executioner and the refiner. Li Muyang's tone was icy cold, causing a chill to rise in Hannah's heart. She immediately moved her head away from Li Muyang's shoulder and silently sighed in her heart, it seems that she really messed with a big shot. If you dare to escape again, Li Muyang's voice seemed like a demon from purgatory as he said coldly. He pointed at the man spread out on the ground, your end will be like him. As he was talking, From Seven had already rushed in with his men and tied the men into dumplings. Hannah was shocked and scared, her legs went limp and she collapsed in Li Muyang's arms. She was really hurt. She was helped into the farmer's house, and in a daze she overheard the conversation. She learned that she had been held captive for a day and a night, and that there was a wound on the back of her head where the blood had dried and scabbed over, so it was no wonder that when she woke up she had been feeling like she had a splitting headache and her back was sticky. Hannah lay on her back and grunted breathlessly, save me, I don't want to die. She stole a glance at Li Muyang's reaction, but saw that he stood expressionlessly, looking at her with emotionless eyes. This episode is over, welcome to the next one. Welcome to listen to the large-scale ancient-style film and television of the same name multi-person audio drama, Peacock City Under the Small Green Clothes, produced by the Spring Willow Culture. Author Lianmiku Izumitsu, led by the National Treasure audio parent-child said Qingdai, Zhang Yunshin lovingly produced. Episode 10. Is there any mistake? I'm at least a top streamer who has traveled across the netizen world, how come this man can't take in oil and salt? Hannah thought in her heart, feeling indignant. Hey, counting on your life, we found your box and deduced that you had been hijacked. Searched all the way to find this place. From Seven said carrying words on the surface, but he unkindly slapped Hannah on the back of his head. What are you doing? It hurts. Hannah complained. You, cooperate with us well and honestly explain what you know. Dare to count on us, humph. From Seven said grimly, if you dare to say half a word about what happened that day, your life won't be saved. You said, that day. So you haven't confessed to Mimi yet, afraid that he'll know you like him? Hannah smiled and asked rhetorically, but drew another displeasure from Seven. Stop. Just as From Seven was about to make another move, an elegant teenager walked in, carrying hot water in his hand. The hot water is here, please make way, I need to clean the wounded's wounds. Hannah barely opened her eyes to see this teenager walk in against the light of the sky. He was gentle and elegant, and his smile was as warm as an alabaster orchid on a spring day. Hannah was a little lost in thought for a moment, and it wasn't until the teenager gently reached out and touched her on the forehead that she came back to her senses. It's okay, no fever. The teenager said softly. No fever. Li Muyang coldly interjected, then why is her face so red? Hannah instantly felt her cheeks burning and hurriedly turned around, facing Li Muyang with the back of her head. However, Li Muyang did not intend to let her go, walked up and forcefully broke her face over. Mu Qian, look, really blushing. Li Muyang did not have the slightest pity, 2 fingers broke Hannah's face out of the shape of a pig's head. Hannah wanted to struggle, but could not resist his strength, and could only stare at him. With this glare, Hannah saw the flirtation in Li Muyang's eyes. This asshole. She cursed in her heart. Brotherly, don't tease her. Mu Qian lightly laughed, she's probably scheming something again. Mrs. Du, don't fall for his tricks. Hannah said helplessly, secretly spitting in his heart. From the conversation, she knew that the name of the young man in front of her was Du Maqian. Thinking about the people's talk, I heard that Lord Shaozai only loves the whiskers, that's that Dr. Dear. The outline of a story from a book of crispy duck literature immediately appeared in Hannah's mind. Du Maqian smiled faintly, I only care about healing and saving people, and ignore the rest. He began to clean Mud's wounds, his movements gentle and delicate. So your name is Du Maqian, good name. Hannah laughed. Du Maqian responded politely, the girl is high. Hearing this from the side, Li Muyang raised his eyebrows, you said Du Maqian's name is good? Then you tell me what's good about it. Li Muyang was obviously against her in every way, and Hannah thought to herself, could it be that I, as a university student in the Department of Folklore, would still be questioned by your stinky brother? She smiled sweetly, Du is wood on the left and earth on the right, wood is soft and delicate first, while earth applies roots, implying stability. This is just like the medicinal properties of grass and trees in Chinese medicine, which is wonderful. Furthermore, Qian means modesty, and Mo Qian implies not being complacent. It seems that the person who gave Dr. Du this great name has great expectations for you. Du Maqian smiled and replied, this name was given by my mother, who hoped that I would be able to help the world by hanging on to it. Sure enough, not only is Imperial Dr. Du's medical skills superior, his medical ethics are also unrivaled. Hannah purposely patted the horse's ass with a few hints of sarcasm. Li Muyang heard the sarcasm in her words and looked at her coldly, but did not retort. The atmosphere in the room fell silent for a moment. At this time, a guard walked in and respectfully said to Li Muyang, my lord, the suspect has already been tortured, but his bones are hard, what should we do? Li Muyang smiled faintly, his voice slightly raised, the person who is harder than my Li Muyang's bones has not yet been born. This person spied on Shaozai Mansion with the intention to kidnap Butler Deer. The wolf's ambition should not be underestimated. Give me to continue the interrogation, use the real criminal law, make sure to pry open his mouth. Yes. From 7 led the order. Every word of this passage was cold and icy, carrying an endless sense of oppression, and Hannah was terrified to hear it. The room once again fell into dead silence, even Du Maqian no longer spoke, only silently organizing Hannah's wounds. Hannah sneaked a glance at Li Muyang and just met his icy cold gaze, frightening her so much that she hurriedly turned her head away. Only to feel that her body began to shake involuntarily. Did I hurt you? Du Maqian asked with concern. It hurts. Hannah held tears in her eyes, and her voice was tinged with a sobbing tone. When Li Muyang heard her voice, the corner of his lips actually slightly hooked up a smile. Du Maqian seemed to have sensed something, but still gently continued the work in hand. Looking into his own helpless eyes, Li Muyang only let out a clear sigh and collected himself. At this time, Hannah's wound was almost bandaged. Du Maqian turned to look at the medicine bucket behind himself and said softly, bandage it yourself, and be gentle in your movements. After saying that, he got up and walked outside. When he walked to the door, Du Maqian stopped his steps. Li Muyang naturally understood what he meant, so he followed Du Maqian out of the house together. When they arrived at the courtyard, Du Maqian directly inquired, brotherly, those children you rescued earlier, how do you intend to place them? Most of them are in shock and have yet to regain their sanity. If necessary, I can heal them. As Du Ma-Chien spoke, sounds of reprimand and moans of pain came from the woodshed. He continued, but brotherly, even if you're tracking down the spies of the Xian Shui kingdom, don't scare the girl. She's clearly not of their path. Hearing this, Li Muyang replied in a heavy tone, in the god sacrifice ceremony a few days ago, had I not received the Gazette report in advance, originally 20 slave children would have perished in the fire. And the person who danced in the great hall was none other than this girl you speak of. Du Ma-Chien had heard of it and asked, but isn't the seven-god dancer of the marginal settlement the Harmony girl? Li Muyang sighed lightly and did not continue to explain. Du Ma-Chien advised, brotherly, we have been in the same class for 10 years, and as your closest friend, I'm the one who is bluntly advising you. Don't socialize too much and put the cart before the horse. Li Muyang seemed shaken and bowed his head in deep thought. Brotherly, you are a young man of great talent, the officialdom is cloudy and treacherous, how many people are staring at you? You should focus your energy on trying to make it in the imperial court instead of pestering these scouts of the Spring Water Kingdom. They are nothing more than fronts, lurking in the Peacock Kingdom and secretly causing chaos, harming many lives, but this is not under your control. Du Ma-Chien paused and said with a serious expression, I know you have never been able to let go of that incident, but I would advise you that the past has passed, and you should live well today. After saying that, Du Ma-Chien turned around and returned to the house. Li Muyang stood in the courtyard, the sunlight sprinkled on his shoulders, and fragments of the past surfaced in his eyes, flashing by as if they were ghosts. Even Du Ma-Chien can see my obsession. He asked himself in his mind. Many years ago, Li Muyang's sister wore a bright red wedding dress and walked out of the compartment. Li Muyang clearly remembers that those were eyes full of tears. Obviously it was a happy event of getting married, but everyone was in tears, especially the mother, who had already fainted from crying and was being assisted. Li Muyang defiantly stopped her sister at that time, angrily inquiring, what the hell is going on? My sister is a priestess, and she doesn't marry until she's 30. But someone coldly responded, that's not marrying an ordinary person. But your sister is marrying the river god today, and after she marries, it will rain, which is a heavenly opportunity to relieve the drought. Li Muyang collapsed, angrily rebuked bitterly and tried to stop it, but to no avail. He chased him to the river, but was stopped by several strong men, and could only watch his sister sink to the bottom of the river. Later, Li Muyang realized the truth of the matter, but everything was beyond redemption. Things like this happen every now and then. The people gradually got used to seeking the witch doctors for everything, and preferred to offer their money to the witch doctors rather than trust anyone else. The witch doctors became the gods of the Peacock Kingdom, and the people regarded their words as oracles and did not disobey them. Li Muyang gradually smelled a strange feeling from it. Witch doctors, this newly rising power within the Peacock country, was it possible that one day, if the witch doctors pointed their spears at the imperial power, these people would also fight to the death to be loyal to them? He would never allow that to happen. Li Muyang stood in the courtyard, his gaze gradually filled with grief, his complexion suddenly grave. Right at this moment, from 7 rushed out from the firewood room and said in a hurried voice, My lord, he can't make it through, he's going to say it. Go. Li Muyang ordered in a low voice, then followed from 7 to the firewood room. As soon as he entered the firewood room, Li Muyang saw that scar-faced man lying on the ground, his hands filled with silver needles, his mouth stuffed with a rag, gasping in pain. His eyes were filled with a pleading light, his head nodding gently. As soon as he ripped the rag out of his mouth from 7, he asked sternly, Speak. Are you a scout of the Brightwater Kingdom? Who do you take orders from here? Li Muyang wanted to stop from 7, but it was too late. Scarface revealed a bizarre smile, his face screwed up with an expression, and dark red blood slowly flowed out from the corner of his mouth. Poison. Li Muyang anxiously went up to break his mouth, and found that Scarface had bitten through his teeth, and the poison had seeped into his body. Du Maqian heard the commotion and rushed over, checked Scarface's condition, shook his head and sighed, "It's no use, he's already taken the poison and killed himself." Li Muyang's face was heavy and a trace of anger flashed in his eyes. He is loyal enough, preferring to die rather than expose the master behind him. From 7 knelt down and begged for forgiveness. The last general was overly hasty and fell for this dead soldier's scheme. "Please forgive me, my lord." Li Muyang glanced at Song Qi and said in a deep voice, "Get up." The Spring Water Country and the Five Valleys organization have always been enemies of our Peacock Country, and sending out a dead soldier is a usual trick. From 7 was a bit overwhelmed, "My lord, now that the clues are broken again, what should we do?" Li Muyang looked up in the direction of the hall, narrowed his eyes, and the corners of his mouth slightly hooked into a smile. "Since they are coming for Butler Lu, sooner or later they will appear again." Meanwhile, Hannah was lying on the bed, her fingers gently touching each other, and her mind was calculating how to escape. Suddenly, Li Muyang pushed the door in like a swift wind and coldly ordered, "Get up." Hannah rubbed the back of her head in a pitiful manner, pretending to have a headache. "I have a headache, I want to sleep more." However, Li Muyang showed no mercy, picking him up and dragging him outside. After leaving the farmhouse, Hannah was thrown into a carriage. He looked around in horror and screamed in terror when he saw the dead Scarface lying in the carriage. Li Muyang calmly sat aside and glanced at Hannah. Hannah pointed at the corpse, his voice trembling, "Dead." He was so scared that he was trembling, drilled into Li Muyang's arms, and choked, "Don. You kill me, please." His voice with a sobbing voice, shoulders shrugged, and his pearly appearance looked extraordinarily helpless. Li Muyang frowned slightly, wanting to push Hannah away, but seeing his pitiful appearance, he didn't say anything more after all. Li Muyang inexplicably blushed a little, his expression not quite natural. He hesitated for a moment, reached out and patted Hannah's shoulder, and said in a low voice, "He committed suicide, I didn't kill him." Hannah frowned and retorted, "Is there a difference? It's still not like you drove me to suicide. If you keep this up, I'm afraid I won't end up well either." Han Kwa on Ta. Li Muyang's voice was cold and firm, "If you don't listen, what happens to him is what happens to you." The atmosphere between the two of them was heavy, and as the carriage moved slowly, Hannah anxiously explained, "I really only know things about the Shifang country, and I've already told you everything. What else do you want me to say?" Li Muyang reached out his hand and gently touched Hannah's face. His tone was low, "You go back to my mansion and continue to play the role of dear butler." Hannah was shocked and instantly understood Li Muyang's intention. "You want me to be the bait to lure out more people, right?" Li Muyang coldly returned, "Why not? You are a slave." Hannah was dumbfounded and incredulous. "I was issued a slave certificate just after I arrived in Peacock Kingdom, how did I forget about this?" Thinking of this, he leaned back like he was electrocuted and looked at Li Muyang warily. "You are not my master, why should I listen to you?" Li Muyang replied indifferently, "Suspected of participating in life sacrifices, all slaves are subject to investigation. Now, you are my slave and have to serve me." Hannah was dumbfounded, he realized that he was powerless to resist. Feudal society was not a reasonable place at all. Back in Shaozai Mansion, Li Muyang pushed Hannah into a compartment and closed the door. Hannah quickly looked around and realized that the windows were all sealed. Li Muyang said coldly, "I'll give you a few days to disguise yourself as butler dear, and then follow 7. Otherwise." Li Muyang didn't continue, he just picked up a vase with his hand, and with a slight force, the vase shattered with a sound. Hannah was so scared that he took 2 steps back violently and hurriedly defended, "Actually, I am not a slave, I am not even human." Li Muyang frowned and stared at him quietly, "Not a human? Then who are you?" Hannah began to babble, trying to justify himself, "I am a Pipa immortal from 100 years ago, and have been keeping company with that peacock-printed chest." You return the chest to me so that I can be at peace and serve you. Li Muyang revealed a hint of amusement. Oh. Pipa immortal. Hannah was about to get angry, but Li Muyang had already opened the door of the room a crack and commanded to the outside, bring the box to him. Surprised, Hannah said hurriedly, you believe me? Li Muyang was teasing, yeah, I believe you. If you're really a Pipa immortal, then you can't use a stick hand. Hannah hurriedly agreed, right, how boring it is to fight and kill. Li Muyang slowly laughed, if you can't use a sword, then use scissors and just cut the strings. Is this person really the Honorable Lord Chancellor and not a hot-handed gangster? As Hannah was thinking in her mind, Song Chi had already carried the box in. He cooed and placed the box on the ground and said coldly, Miss Hannah, I can tell you that my brother and I are guarding outside. You don't want to play any tricks this time. He won't. Li Muyang walked out with his hands behind his back, and on his way out, he still didn't forget to instruct Song Chi, later on, buy me 10 pairs of good scissors. Hannah wanted to cry, muttering in his heart, Li Muyang, this person actually believe me or not? That night, from 7 and others strengthened the defense, every 2 hours shift, before and after the guard like an iron bucket. Even if Hannah had the ability to fly and hide, he could not escape. Hannah nestled in her room, grunting and playing pitiful, geez, I'm all over the place. From 7 outside sneered, stop pretending, either agree to our Lord's conditions, or you can continue squatting. But let me remind you, you only have 3 days to think about it. You're so young, why are you so vicious? Hannah was helpless and really wanted to write a note to Richard to complain about Li Muyang's flyer behavior. He picked up a pen and wrote furiously, Richard, Professor, when will you save me back? Li Muyang, that living hell, he's going to cut my neck. Soon, Richard's reply letter arrived, but the content was a shock to Hannah. Hannah, since he gave you 3 days, then you should record the Peacock Kingdom's customs and locales. By the way, Li Muyang is a prime minister, so this is very important. You can try to ask around about the Peacock Kingdom's court ethos and promotion system, which is of great significance to our ethnographic research. Hannah was so angry that her chest was stuffy, and she cursed in her heart, are you just going to let me suffer in ancient times? If I don't live, how can you guys still do your research? Richard quickly passed another note, which read, I judge Li Muyang is not a bad person, so you can definitely survive. Go for it. Hannah was so angry that he wanted to spit out 3 liters of blood, but he also realized that he had to bribe Richard. He saw the candlestick on the table and tossed it into the box without a good grace, attaching a note, bribe you with a candlestick, it's a treasure from 1,000 years ago. But strangely enough, the note disappeared, while the candlestick remained silent in the box. Could it be that things from this era can't be transmitted back? Hannah froze and hurriedly threw in pillows, tent hooks, and vases, and as a result, none of these things could be transmitted back. Soon after, Richard passed a new note, what's going on? Can't get the stuff back. It could be, I can't even pass it on as a large living person. Hannah tossed back a note. Soon after, Richard sent a small note, and when Hannah picked it up, he was immediately confused by the various formula checks on it. He flipped to the bottom before seeing Richard's note, the experts say that the wormhole is slowly shrinking, and that the transmission ability has weakened. We are detecting changes in the wormhole and will notify you when we find the right time. Little Mud, you must hold on. Frustrated, Hannah put the note on the candle flame and burned it, thinking sadly, come on, that means I probably won't be able to go back. Just as he was saddened, a crisp voice rang out from outside the room, young lords. I'm Xiangye from the old lady's house, here to bring food to this girl. Our Lord didn't ask for food to be delivered, even if you're from the old lady's house. The old lady heard that there is a girl who looks like a heavenly fairy in the residence and had to have the kitchen make some exquisite meals to send over. What's the matter? Do you even want to disobey the old lady? I'll say this up front. Lord Li is the most filial of us all. When I report back, the old lady will talk to Lord Li, and if she finds out that you're preventing people from eating, it'll be your fault. This. The old lady has misunderstood, this girl is a suspect, not some. It's a suspect and not really a prisoner, so it's not unlikely that you're looking into the wrong thing. From 7 probably gave in, and a sound of unlocking immediately sounded at the door. Hannah heard it and hurriedly ran to the bed, lowered the bed net, then turned her back to the outside and pretended to sleep. The door opened and soft footsteps came in, then someone closed the door. Hannah smelled the aroma of a meal through the bed tent. Princess, she's asleep. Princess. When Hannah heard these words, her ears immediately perked up. With all the commotion just now, how could she possibly be asleep? The man walked over to the bed and lifted the bed tent with one hand. Get up, stop pretending. Hannah had no choice but to yawn and sit up, smilingly looking at the 2 young girls standing in front of the bed. The one named Xiangyi, presumably a maid in the old lady's house, stood by the side with a lowered brow. The girl called Princess, although also dressed in maid's clothing, but between her eyebrows there was a natural nobility and pride. The young girl's pair of black eyes looked coldly at Hannah. Are you the woman that young boy Li brought back? Hannah didn't answer. How dare you? This is the most favored honorary princess of the lord of the land. Hannah's heart moved, the corners of her mouth raised slightly, and she pretended to be calm and said, Then may I ask the honorable princess, how come she doesn't stay in the palace, but has come to visit this humble room? The honorable princess smiled coldly and replied, Naturally, I'm here to see you little wannabe hoof, to see how far you can go. Say. How exactly did you seduce Lord Li Muyang Li? Hannah looked at the Princess of Honor and noticed that when she mentioned the word Li Muyang, her cheeks actually flushed. In her heart, she suddenly realized that this Princess of Honor was also the peach blossom that Li Muyang had caused. Now that she heard that Li Muyang had brought a woman back to the house, she was naturally enraged. Seduce? Can't talk about it. I merely danced at the god's sacrifice ceremony and he pestered me. I was reluctant, but he is Lord Shaozai, and he is powerful. You. Don't you be arrogant. You think Lord Li really takes you seriously? The honorable princess was so angry that her face turned white. Hannah deliberately sat down on the edge of the bed and pretended to play with her hands in a leisurely manner. Well, it wasn't taken seriously. He just said he wanted to marry me, saying that in this life, I'm the only one who can enter his heart, even though the world is full of wonders. He is not even willing to dip a piece of leaf. Hannah deliberately said while observing the honor, and in his heart, he knew that the ancient princess had a big temper, and when she started the fire, she would do it, and he didn't want to suffer. You're talking nonsense. How dare you, a slave woman, marry him? Honor was shaking with anger. What's wrong with slavery? I can get out of slavery. The princess is really good at this, even inquiring about my identity. Then you should have also heard that young boy Li has deep roots of love for me. Hannah deliberately stimulated the other party. Honor was so infuriated that her chest rose and fell, tears welling up in her eyes. I don't know how to be shameless. Let me ask you, did you have that with Lord Li? Which one? Hannah pretended to be confused. Honor and Kaiba's faces instantly reddened. That one is the gift of closing, the cave-in. As soon as Hannah grabbed her collar, she pretended to be shy. Oops, what are you guys talking about? That's not true, but then again, I must leave my most precious thing for the big wedding day. But if Lord Li has to ask me to offer my body, I may not be able to refuse, so I can only comply. As Hannah lightly grasped her collar, she pretended to be shy, her voice softening in playful innocence. Oh my, what are you all talking about? That's not true at all, she said, feigning embarrassment as a small blush crept up her cheeks. Then, with a mischievous glint in her eyes, she added, but thinking about it, I must save my most precious thing for the big wedding day. But if Lord Li were to insist on asking me to offer my body, I fear I wouldn't be able to refuse. So, I would have no choice but to comply. After saying this, Hannah turned her head slightly, her playful gaze deliberately avoiding Li Muyang's, though the sly smile on her lips gave away her teasing intent. A whole corpse. You ancient people really think leaving me with a whole body is a favor? Hannah muttered sarcastically, her eyes flicking toward Scarface and then to the honorary princess. Both of them claim they're doing me a favor by promising to leave me intact. But I still have so much life ahead of me, so much to offer the world. Why should I be the one to die? Surely we can come to some kind of agreement. Look, if you help me escape, wouldn't Lord Li be yours, entirely? No competition, no obstacles. Hannah's voice shifted, her tone becoming more persuasive, attempting to appeal to Honor's ambitions. Yet Honor remained unaffected, her expression as cold and unyielding as ever. Xiang Yi, standing beside her, took her hand and smiled chillingly. Our princess will one day marry into the Shaozai mansion. When that day comes, she will be the mistress of the house, and you? You'll be nothing more than a mere concubine. She will crush you like an insect, with barely a second thought. With that, Xiang Yi offered his support to Honor as they turned to leave, leaving Hannah standing in frustration. She stared at the white silk in her hands, sighing deeply. AI, overplaying my hand and angering my supposed savior. What a blunder. But it's not a total loss. Hannah glanced at the silk again, a flicker of inspiration crossing her mind as an idea began to take shape. Slowly, a sly grin spread across her face. Outside, the night was dark, the inky sky stretching endlessly above. The 7 guards sitting outside the room were beginning to doze off, their heads bobbing as sleep threatened to overtake them. Even the brothers stationed nearby seemed fatigued, some stifling yawns. Suddenly, the sound of a bench crashing to the floor echoed from inside the room, shattering the quiet of the night. Startled, the men jerked awake, their senses instantly on high alert. Girl! Girl! An agonized gasp came faintly out of the darkness. From the 7 suddenly scalped numbness, close to the door cracked to see, the room is actually a white figure hanging in midair. Aya, all get up and don't sleep. The girl hanged herself. From 7 exclaimed. The people hurriedly got up and scrambled to find the key to open the door. From 7 agile hands a knife cut off the white silk, that white figure instantly fell, he subconsciously embraced the Hannah in his arms, but found that the other's body has been cold. It's no good. Quickly save someone. From 7 hurriedly shouted for someone to light the candles and gently placed Hannah on the bed as the whole person began to tremble. Just then, a soft laugh suddenly came from the room. The material for the sacrifice, how come you are now choosing the river god's bride? Li Muyang's voice carried a bit of anger. Lumo bowed her head slightly, my lord, this matter was directly ordered by the state master, and I'm afraid that no one in the court would dare to easily oppose it. Li Muyang's face sank, his fingers slowly paddling in the water, obviously many doubts and uneasiness had arisen in his heart. Bride of the river goddess. Choosing one means another sacrifice will have to be made. Peacock Kingdom can't continue to be so foolish. Li Muyang said in a low voice, his eyes revealing icy determination. Lumo quietly looked at Li Muyang and hesitated for a moment before slowly speaking, how does your excellency intend to respond? If you stop it hastily, I'm afraid that the state master will be unfavorable to you. Li Muyang narrowed his eyes and sneered, state master. He's been secretly making trouble for a long time, this time I'd like to see what other tricks he can turn up. At that moment, there was a slight knock on the door outside the room. My lord, there is an urgent report. From 7's voice came through the doorway. Li Muyang frowned and waved his hand to signal Lumo to open the door. From 7 entered the door with a grave expression on his face, my lord, that girl has run away. Li Muyang's face was expressionless, just faintly asked, ran away. Ran off to where? From 7 bowed her head, she trapped our people with some bizarre means and left a strange double in the room that is now going nowhere. Li Muyang stood up, droplets of water sliding down his robust body as he coldly glanced at Songqi. It seems she's smarter than I thought. Should we send a manhunt? From 7 asked tentatively. Li Muyang pondered for a moment and shook his head. No need. She won't be able to run far. Continue to strengthen the guard of the mansion, sooner or later she will come back. From 7 nodded and retreated, while Lumo silently handed Li Muyang a bath towel. That girl is indeed not simple. Li Muyang muttered to himself, his eyes flickering with unknown emotions. This episode is over. It gradually dispersed, revealing the bright moon and the flowery clay figure outside the window. Li Muyang was slightly stunned, then his brows tightened. Who are you? Hannah laughed softly at the window, her voice like a fresh breeze on the face. I've come to give you a farewell. Farewell? Li Muyang frowned, uneasiness surging in his heart. Yes, I heard you have a new engagement coming up. Hannah said softly, a hint of undetectable flirtation in her gaze. How did you know? Li Muyang's heart shook. News always travels fast in this world. Han Asian raised his eyebrows slightly, as if toying with the secret. When the honorable princess heard this, her heart grew discontented and she coldly interjected, Who are you and what gives you the right to interrupt here? I'm just a traveler passing through. Hanad made light of the situation, a hint of playfulness in his tone. Li Muyang's gaze traveled back and forth between the two, but his thoughts were in turmoil inside. He knew that Hannah was definitely not simple. What do you want? Li Muyang finally broke the silence and asked. It's not material things that I want. Hannah smiled slightly, rather, it's something to make you re-examine yourself and the people around you. The honorable princess's heart tightened, sensing a crisis. She glared at Hannah with dissatisfaction. What exactly do you want? I want to tell you that in the vortex of power, what you really have to protect is not fame and fortune, but the true feelings in your heart. Hannah said firmly. Li Muyang quietly listened, a wave of emotion welling up in his heart. He didn't know exactly who this woman was, but her words were like a light that illuminated the confusion deep within him. Do you really believe that emotions can overcome everything? Li Muyang finally asked, his eyes gleaming. Of course, replied Fluttershy confidently, love and truth are always the most powerful weapons. Just then, the moonlight outside the window sprinkled on them, as if it was adding a touch of mystery to Hannah's words. Li Muyang couldn't help but be attracted to her, and a trace of hope quietly rose in his heart. Li Muyang gently stopped him, don't be in a hurry, listen to me first. Hannah stopped at once and turned around, trying to act innocent. I really don't know what's going on, I'm just staying here. Do you really think I would believe you? There was a hint of disdain in Li Muyang's voice. I know all about your plans with that Pipa immortal. Hannah thought in his heart, this man is really smart, he can even think of these details. He decided to continue acting. I didn't do it on purpose, I just want to live, please let me live. Let you live? Li Muyang smiled faintly, do you think I will trust you easily? If you want me to lure the snake out of the hole, you have to promise me a condition first. What conditions? Hannah frowned slightly, his heart alerted. You have to tell me what Pipa Immortal's true purpose is. Li Muyang looked straight at Hannah, his eyes firm. Hannah's heart tightened, he understood that this was not a good path to take. Pipa Immortal's secret could not be easily exposed. He hesitated for a moment and finally spoke, Pipa Immortal wants to return to the Immortal sect and get free. Freedom. Li Muyang repeated, the corner of his mouth hooked into a cold smile, do you think this will make me believe you? I can prove it. Reluctantly, Hannah tried to argue, I'm willing to help you, if you give me time. Li Muyang pondered for a moment, seemingly thinking about Hannah's words. He knew that Hannah was not a simple character, and had unknown secrets behind him. Okay, I'll give you time, but you must give me a satisfactory answer within 3 days. Li Muyang finally made a decision. Thank you, Lord Li. Hannah was relieved in her heart, knowing that she had saved a life for the time being. Meanwhile, the honorable princess had clenched her teeth in anger and said indignantly, Li Lang, how can you let her off so easily? She's a lackey. Princess, my decision will not change. Li Muyang responded coldly, a trace of helplessness flashing in his eyes. You. The honorable princess looked at Hannah angrily, her heart filled with jealousy and resentment. I'm just fighting for my own survival. Hannah responded, a determined gleam in her eyes. Li Muyang silently watched the clash between the two men, but in his heart, he was weighing the situation. He understood that this power struggle was far more complicated than he had imagined. Hannah felt their proximity and couldn't help but tense up in his heart. He knew that he was now in a dangerous situation, and it was as if Li Muyang and Songqi's gazes were able to see through everything about him. What are you thinking? Li Muyang's voice was low and magnetic, with a hint of oppression. Hannah was slightly stunned and forced herself to calm down, shaking her head. I wasn't thinking about anything, I was just thinking about the color of the sky. Li Muyang didn't seem too convinced, his brows slightly furrowed. Do you think the color of the sky can hide your inner secrets? Hannah's heart skipped a beat, a wave of shock coursing through him. His mind raced as he pondered how to respond. He knew all too well that Li Muyang was incredibly sharp, perceptive, and not someone to be easily deceived. Any slip-up could expose him. Forcing a calm demeanor, Hannah tilted his head slightly and smiled, trying to mask the unease swirling within. I'm just a humble little fairy, he said, his voice light and nonchalant. Asking for rain is part of my duty, something that comes naturally to me. It has nothing to do with you, Lord Li. Even as he spoke, Hannah's thoughts churned. He couldn't afford to let Li Muyang see through his facade, and every word had to be carefully chosen. You are right. Li Muyang smiled lightly, yet there was a hint of sinister in this smile, but your ability to seek rain is no ordinary thing. If you really have such a skill, then you can bring hope to the Peacock Kingdom. I am just a small woman, how could I dare to say anything? Hannah pretended to be innocent, trying to hide the panic inside. Don't pretend, I know you're not simple. Li Muyang's gaze was like a sharp blade, piercing straight into Hannah's heart. Hannah was embarrassed and didn't know how to respond. Just then, from Seven walked over, interrupting the confrontation between the two. Lord Li, news has come in from outside, from Seven spoke, his voice tinged with a hint of nervousness. He stood rigid, hands clasped tightly in front of him, as he continued, the people have responded with great enthusiasm to your decision. It seems everyone is eagerly awaiting the appearance of the little fairy who begged for rain. Li Muyang paused for a moment, his expression unreadable as he processed the information. The praise from the people seemed to have little effect on his demeanor, though the mention of the little fairy caused a brief flicker in his eyes. He glanced at from Seven, noting the tension in his voice, and gave a slight nod, his face still as cold and calculated as ever. Let them wait, Li Muyang finally said, his tone low and commanding. The time will come when they see what they desire. His gaze drifted back to the courtyard, his mind already moving several steps ahead, as if calculating the next move in a game only he fully understood. The little fairy who begs for rain. Li Muyang repeated, a hint of thought on his face. Hannah's heart rejoiced, just the opportunity he had been waiting for. Yes, it's me. I can ask for rain for the Peacock Kingdom and bring hope to the people. If you can really do it, I would be willing to give you a chance. Li Muyang's eyes glittered, but to make people believe you, you must not just make empty promises. I'll prove it to you. Hannah said firmly, a surge of courage welling up inside her. Li Muyang smiled slightly, seemingly satisfied with Hannah's performance. Good, then please prepare as soon as possible, the people outside are waiting for your performance. With Li Muyang's arrangements set in motion, Hannah's heart swirled with a mixture of anticipation and nervousness. She was acutely aware of the enormous challenge that lay ahead, and the weight of it pressed on her like a storm on the horizon. Yet, amid the tension, there was also a flicker of excitement. This was her moment, her opportunity, a chance to prove herself in ways she had never imagined before. Every step forward would be a test, but Hana knew she could not afford to falter. The stakes were high, and her fate intertwined with the path Li Muyang had laid out for her. She took a deep breath, steadying her resolve, knowing that this challenge could either push her beyond her limits or carve a new path for her future. The melody drifted in gently, like a serene cloud that slowly descended before him, soft yet captivating. The sound of the flower clay was delicate, each note crisp and clear, carrying a fragile beauty that seemed almost ethereal. It resonated in the quiet air, and Li Muyang found himself utterly mesmerized by it. The song, so tender and enchanting, wrapped around him like a silken thread, drawing him deeper into its haunting charm. Each brittle note seemed to shimmer, hanging in the space between them, fragile yet powerful. The beauty of the sound stirred something within him, a quiet stillness that he hadn't felt in a long time, as if the music had reached a place no words could touch. Of course. Songshi started, but before he could finish, Li Muyang raised his hand, signaling for him to continue with his duties. Li Muyang, however, had already turned slightly, his thoughts drifting elsewhere as his gaze landed on the young girl swinging under the blooming flower tree. Her figure moved gracefully with each swing, and every now and then, petals fluttered down from the branches, carried by the soft breeze. As he watched her, a wave of nostalgia washed over him, pulling him back to distant memories. Inexplicably, he was reminded of his childhood, when Ajay would sit by his side, humming soft melodies in that same delicate, soothing voice. The scene before him now, filled with flowers, the gentle rhythm of the swing, and the girl's quiet presence, seemed to echo that past, stirring emotions he had long buried. For a moment, the present and the past blurred, and he was lost in the memory of a simpler, more innocent time. However, before Li Muyang could pull himself out of his memories, he heard the song come to an abrupt end. Then came the voice of Hana gritting her teeth, "Li Haozi, it's too strong for you to ask me to beg for rain." The mention of the three words, Li Haozi, sent a sharp jolt through Li Muyang's temples, his nerves instantly on edge. His eyes darkened as he turned sharply to look at Song Qi. Sensing the shift in the air, Song Qi immediately lowered his gaze, his body stiffening with fear. Without a word, he retreated 3 cautious steps, his head bowed low, not daring to meet Li Muyang's gaze. Li Muyang sneered, the cold sound of it cutting through the tense silence. Without another glance at Song Qi, he clasped his hands behind his back and strode into the courtyard. His steps were deliberate, calm, yet the weight of his presence filled the space, leaving no doubt of his authority. His mind, though outwardly composed, was racing, the name Li Haozi stirring something dark and unspoken within him. "That's not how the autumn rain text is supposed to be recited," Hana muttered, startled, as she climbed down from the swing. She blew out a puff of air and glared at Li Muyang. Today, Li Muyang looked different than before. Gone was his usual basalt-colored soft armor, replaced by a light green robe intricately embroidered with bamboo leaves. The robe itself seemed to shimmer faintly, as though bathed in moonlight, with a delicate veil draping softly over his shoulders. The sharp, murderous aura he usually carried had vanished, replaced by an air of grace and elegance. His striking appearance caught Hana off guard, and much of her anger quickly faded. Still frowning, Hana stood in place, watching him with a mixture of curiosity and surprise. She couldn't help but notice how the softness of the moonlit veil contrasted with the fierceness she had once associated with him. His previously intimidating presence seemed subdued, and now there was something calming, almost mesmerizing, about the way he carried himself. The elegant demeanor he exuded was so unexpected that it left her momentarily speechless. Hana shook her head, trying to cling to the annoyance she felt moments earlier. But seeing him like this, dressed in soft, flowing fabrics, looking so composed and serene, made it difficult to stay mad. The transformation was too sudden, too complete. Her indignation had melted away before she could even fully process it, and all that was left was an inexplicable sense of calm as she continued to gaze at him. If you're asking me to call for rain, you'll have to follow my rules. I don't care if you perform a dance, but you must recite this verse at the prayer assembly to honor heaven and earth. Li Muyang pulled a folded piece of paper from his sleeve and handed it to Hannah. Hannah accepted it, her curiosity piqued. As she unfolded the paper, her eyes scanned the elegant yet cryptic lines written on it, Qingli Jiaxinyer, Hanji meets cloudy sky. The farmers cannot plow, the homeland mourns the years of brothers. The heart of the earth, Kongming, lights the mountains and rivers. The county cites 4 points, fasting to spare Chendo's whip. Hannah's brow furrowed. You expect me to memorize this? Li Muyang's expression remained calm but firm. Of course. You have 1 day to memorize it. I'll be testing you 3 times a day, morning, noon, and night, until the prayer ceremony. Hannah's heart sank, her eyes glazing over as a familiar sense of dread crept up on her. It was the same overwhelming feeling she had during the college entrance exams, when literary texts like this had dominated her studies. The fear of being trapped under the weight of incomprehensible phrases returned, making her stomach churn. But she knew she had no choice.